Here it is, rising from the dead itself, episode 68 of the FilmFile, the film show for the living dead geeks by living dead geeks. So, hello and welcome. Of course, I'm Lee Ford.
And I think I'm Andy Meakin.
Well, that helps. They've not got around to cloning us yet, but with our busy schedules, maybe they should. This week, as we said at the top end of the programme, 1968, and probably for me, one of the scariest films of all time, George A. Romero's classic, Night of the Living Dead.
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Coming to get you. Hey, Barbara.
I'm coming to get you, Barbara.
Coming to get thee.
Put kettle on, I'm coming to get you.
Yeah. Barnsley version. They're coming to get you, love. Them zombies. Not dead, you know. Undead.
Bayek.
And I'm right.
Zombies that starve in Barnsley.
Yeah, they'll be in. There's a couple of pizza
There's
places.
no fucking brains for them to eat.
Yeah, we'll cut that as my dear other half is actually from Barnsley. So
that's going on the videos.
So trailer there.
Yep.
This absolute classic of the genre and a game changer for the zombie movies that we'd seen before and for horror movies in general. George A. Romero turned this out in 1968 on, well, basically a zero budget. The story follows 7 people who are trapped in a rural farmhouse in western Pennsylvania and are under assault by an enlarging group of cannibalistic, undead ghouls. I remember seeing this film for the first time on late night TV. BBC Two, I think, used to do a series of horror movies. It scared me to death. It scared me in a way that made me want to go and board up all the windows. It scared me in a way that, how would I react if this happened? Because there's such a sense with this film of it feeling real, of it feeling as though it's happening outside of your window. Maybe it's the black and white that makes it even more grueling. Maybe it's the low budget actually working in its favor. Maybe it's the fact that all the characters end up, to some end, turning on each other. It's all of those things. And it's all of those things that have made it to be an absolutely classic of all horror movies. And one that, because of that, it's so influential right up to present day, as we're saying, with George A. Romero's latest script, hopefully in production. But The Walking Dead couldn't have existed without Night of the Living Dead. Andy, what are your memories of this?
I was introduced to this after I'd already seen Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. And again, it would have been from TV, because I saw all of them via, it must have been BBC Two, late night horror films that they used to run, or Channel 4, one or the other. But I remember, because I'd already been introduced to his progressive films and the more colorized ones, my first approach of Night of the Living Dead, it didn't have the impact that I expected it to have. And I felt a bit underwhelmed.
Okay.
However, when I came to university, one of the cinemas in the city centre of Sheffield, the Odeon cinema at the time, used to do Friday night late night specials of old horror films. And on one night, they got Night of the Living Dead in. And I got to see it on the big screen. And this was exactly the same as what happened with The Exorcist. When I first saw The Exorcist, I couldn't get what all the fuss was. But when I went back to revisit it with fresh eyes, without that expectation, it proper chilled me. And watching this on a screen really drew me in. And really, I got everything that was genuinely pushing the boundaries of the genre, but also the genuine chilling nature. You've mentioned the low budget, and it looks low budget because of the framing, because of the way that it's made, and does that benefit? Yes, I rewatched this the other day, and that was one thing that stood out straight away, is the cheap look of it makes it feel like a home video. And so it makes it feel like you're watching found footage. And you could basically say that this was basically a pioneer for found footage genre that came decades later.
Well, that's right. I mean, Romero had cut his teeth on corporate films, industrial films, as they're known of in the States, and commercials. And he brought a guerrilla filmmaking technique to it. A lot of it's handheld. A lot of it, because of that, gives it that intensity of it feeling almost documentary-esque to it. So I totally get you. And I think that's one of the reasons it works. The lack of it being slick, the lack of it, and it doesn't, and I'm being careful on what I say here, because while it doesn't look slick, it doesn't look amateurish either. I mean, I've
Oh
seen
no.
enough Z movie horror movies which look like, what they are. They're pure garbage. This doesn't have that quality. I mean, he's got a very well defined script that he wrote with John Russo, and it's got great framing. It looks like a proper movie, but that low budget quality to it, that urgency that it brings to it with the low budget quality, is what makes it effective. I mean, he drew from a film and a book that we've talked about lots of times, Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. That was a big influence on this, and it's just gone on, and it redefined what we think of zombies, because up until then, zombies were usually people in some sort of, either the undead that were just in a haze, or they were or people that had been almost hypnotized into be as what was known as a zombie state. But we've never seen horror like this, and it is a visceral film as well. And being in black and white, you paint in the red with your head to a degree.
Yeah, the black and white photography allowed it to get away with a lot more gore and gruesome aspects than you'd normally get in a horror film of that time. Because you didn't see the red, you didn't see like the color palette of any splatters or rips or shreds. You had to fill that blank in your head, and it makes it work so much more. Whenever people say like, "Oh, I don't see the point in black and white films," oh no, 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 it truly gets the chilling atmosphere of this film. The single location of just a rural farmhouse helps create a tension. It gives the atmosphere, it gives the claustrophobia. We're in that house with them as there's things clawing outside, and it's the slow build of the story as well. Even though you're thrown straight into someone being killed, Johnny, the brother of Barbara, and then she flees to the house, you don't know exactly what's happened, because all that you know is that a pale-faced man killed him. And it's as radio reports and TV news broadcasts intersect as part of the story that it starts to fill in the gaps as to what's happened, and the dead are walking the earth. Like you say, this used zombies in a completely new way, and it basically set the template that everything today draws upon. You look at everything from comedies to horrors to even just any general TV show. There has been references to moments from the Dead series throughout media constantly, to such a degree that even someone who's never seen Night of the Living Dead will identify and recognize so many moments in the film just because of how often it's referred to and referenced in other shows, other films, books, comics, serials, even soap operas have thrown references to Night of the Living Dead, which is bizarre.
It is. I mean, when the film came out, it did very well on the box office, especially as it was such a low budget of $114,000, and it grows somewhere in the eventually around 12 millions domestically, and 18 million internationally. But and one of the reasons, and you can list the reasons this film did so well, is there was a initially controversy about it because of its explicit violence and its explicit gore, but it garnered a cult success and a cult following among not just fans but mainstream critics, and so much so. And one of the elements that I think I think elevates it is there's a reflection on social. Sorry, there's a reflection on social and cultural change that was happening during the United States in 1960s, especially particularly with the casting of who was the casting of Dwayne Jones, an African American, as the leading man in this, and to have a black man at the heart and the center of a film was still incredibly new ground for America in the 60s. And of course, the way the ending turns out. Even now, I don't want to give it away because, I mean, spoilers, it has been out for just short of 50 years. Or in fact, it has been out. It has been out for 50 years, but it still packs a wallop. It did so well that it spawned a franchise that included the 5 official sequels and a remake, which isn't too bad, directed by Tom Savini. Even though a friend of mine, quite a famous film director, stood up and walked out of it. I don't think it's that bad, and is as close to Romero's vision as possible, and updating the female characters who are pretty hard done by in the movie. But it still packs a punch. It's a classic piece of Imagineering film work that has inspired, as you said, a whole slew of media, and including inspiring movies like Assault on Precinct 13, in which John Carpenter has said, without Night of the Living Dead, there would have never been Assault on Precinct 13. The faceless hordes that are attacking a one location. Yep. Right up to things like The Evil Dead, people trapped in that solitary confinement of one set, which just makes it very, very claustrophobic.
The parallels with Evil Dead are very significant because that first film by Sam Raimi, similar to this film, was low budget and looks quite kind of cheap, but the cheapness benefits the actual film. I rewatched it this week on Amazon, who've got the 2K restored version from a few years ago. And one thing that stood out for me this time was the sound mix from the music, which is kind of scratchy at times, to eerie background sounds. Everything is layered to unnerve and fill every aspect of the environment that you're thrown in as an audience. And it's the sound effects that really elevated the tension in me. It really made me start to chill. And this is a film that you say that it's one of the scariest films that you've ever seen. And the more that I watch it, the more scared I get by it, because the more I find to immerse myself into it. It's such a great example of low budget filmmaking, and to have such a huge influence. You've mentioned the social commentary of race issues that were kind of in here. Don't want to actually touch on it because, spoiler, even though you might not have seen, even though it's 50 years old, I don't want to spoil it, like you said, by revealing some of the aspects of the film. But the rest of the series all went on to tackle social or political issues as underlying themes behind everything else. The second film, Dawn of the Dead, was consumerism. The third film was military experimentation and military intelligence. The fourth film was an attack on corporate culture. Romero cleverly uses a horror genre to convey important messages of the times at which he makes the films. Absolutely brilliant film that led on to an absolutely brilliant series of films.
Geeks. And if you're enjoying the FilmFile and you are thinking, you know what, that hour flew by, well, you can listen to an extended version on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Yes, there is a FilmFile podcast. Take a listen, hit the subscribe button, and you know what? 2 hours of your life will just zing by. Okay, and then I'll do the usual.
I thought you were going to say, and if you're wondering why we're not singing soul music this week.
Yeah. You should say that afterwards. Now drop that line in. But we won't. Just say something along. We won't be singing any soul numbers this week.
And suffice to say, we won't be singing any soul numbers this week.
Yeah. Check your timings. Okay, next one. So now on to reviews, and with the most tenuous of Mr. Braithwaite, Jimmy. We're on fire. Don't know what I'm there. Voice broke. It's because my breathing's getting better. Then I'm talking faster.
Oh, it's your voice
Miss
broke.
Jones. Oh. Miss Jones. So Marvel this year with the MCU on Apple Plus.
Disney Plus.
Sorry, with the MCU on Disney Plus. However, they've added to the cast Uli Lata Cuckoo Fuck Off. It looked like that. I'm dyslexic. Don't forget to edit that one out.
Oh my God.
So they've added the young...
Yeah, it's a cracking film. It's genuinely funny, but also quite nicely low budgetly brutal. And I'd be interested to see not only a French remake, I'd be interested to see an American remake. Yes, I'm happy for remakes because you know what? If they can play with the idea and do something, why not let it happen?
And that is the news.
Dig it in, bump.